In order to complete the midterm, you need to find one struggling reader in grades 7 through 12. They will most likely be below grade level. As you noticed, most of the passages are between pre-primer and 6th grade, and then they're clumped together into upper middle school and high school. Generally, the students you're working with as a special educator will be below their chronological grade level, and therefore they will most likely fall in the pre-K through 6th grade reading level. If you still need to complete the EdTPA, a good choice would be a student with whom you will complete the EdTPA. You can use this information from the QRI to complete the context of learning and for justifying the reason for your materials and instructional methods during the planning commentary of the EdTPA. So this can be used, the information you gather can be used for more than just this course. You will need to audio record the entire administration of the QRI. You may need to do this in multiple sessions. But when you upload your work, you need to upload each part as one document. So you will upload all of your word lists as one document. And in a separate location, you will upload the informational / out loud administration as one document. And the same for the narrative / silent reading administration. These documents are the scorer sheets that you will be writing on. They need to be in the order you gave them. This will help us give you feedback for what was appropriate next steps or where you should have changed your administration. As you can see, something like pdfmerge.com is a free online site for combining multiple documents. You will need to Google multiple documents. So for instance, if you're taking pictures of all of your examiner copies, you will need to combine all of the pictures into one file so we can scroll down and see how you performed the word lists, the out loud administration, and the silent reading administration. When you log into Blackboard to submit your work, you will see there are multiple areas to submit the assignment. The word lists are broken down into the scorer sheets and the audio recordings, as are the out loud administration and the silent reading administration. You may have multiple recordings for each required submission. Please upload all of the required recordings. If, for instance, the word list audio and the silent reading audio are on the same recording, upload it twice in each location. For your examiner copies, you need to upload all of the documents, either scanned as a PDF or combined as pictures, into one file and upload it in the appropriate location. Again, you will complete this process twice. The objective of this administration is to find the independent and instructional level of expository and informational texts. Since informational texts tend to have more difficult vocabulary, you will want to listen as the focus learner reads. The narrative text is something a focus learner is more familiar with. Therefore, they will read it silently. Again, you want to find the independent level and instructional level with this type of text. We understand that certain levels, such as pre-primer 1 and 3, only have narrative texts. Therefore, you will need to perform the out loud administration with narrative text if your learner falls within the pre-primer range. This chart tells you the type of text for each level and where to find the examiner copies and student passages. This is according to the online version provided by Vital Shelf. If you have a bound copy, you may have different page numbers. Once you've identified your focus learner, you're going to complete step 1, administering the word list. These charts are also available in your book, and they show you where you should start depending on the focus learner's chronological grade level. You also did a word list simulation during the course, and you can refer back to those presentations and videos to help you administer the word list. Now, ideally, you want to identify the student's instructional level when administering the word list. This would be between 70 and 85%. These are the word lists you would give to your student. As you can see, it's just the words. There are no lines and no places for marking. As you can see with the examiner copies, there's lines to mark words automatically identified and identified. You would also write down any mispronunciations using the phonetic spelling, and you would complete the equation at the bottom for total correct automatic, total correct identified, and total number correct. This is required for every word list submission, even if the student scores on the frustration level. Flow chart shows you what to do depending on the score. You need to grade each word list immediately so that you know what your next step is. If your focus learner is scoring above a 90%, you need to keep going harder. So if you're on a level 4 and they score 95%, you need to go up to the level 5 word list. Once this focus learner scores between 70 and 85%, you stop administering the word list. You see the level of the word list. So if it's a level 5 word list and he or she scores 80%, you go to a level 5 informational expository text. If the focus learner continuously scores less than 70%, you would go progressively easier. So if you started at a level 5, you would go down to a level 4 and continue to decrease by 1 level until the focused learner earns between 70 and 85%. You only utilize the word list administration once. This is to identify the instructional level passage you should administer. You only need to perform the word list as the first step before the read aloud administration. Once you go to the silent reading administration, you do not need to re-administer the word lists. Now that you've identified your focused learner's instructional level using the word list, you continue on to the passages. The next step are the concept questions. There are a set of concept questions before every passage in the entire QRI. You learn that background knowledge affects reading comprehension. Therefore, you need to rate the learner's responses on a scale of 0 to 3. And on the examiner copies of the concept questions, there are suggestions in italics of possible responses. The more familiar a student is with a passage, the better their score will be when it comes to reading comprehension. Ideally, you would like your focused learner to score higher than 55% familiar on the passage you will administer. But what if your focused learner is not 55% familiar with any of the expository or informational texts that are on their instructional level according to the word lists? What you do is choose the passage they are most familiar with. Do not go up or down a grade level, and do not switch to a narrative text. You want to stay on the same instructional level that you identified using the word list and just utilize the passage they are most familiar with. When we look at your work, we will see the score of the concept questions and why you chose a specific passage based on the score relative to the other informational texts. At this point, you have removed the word list from your focused learner, and you are now verbally administering the concept questions. The focused learner does not have a set of concept questions in front of them. You will be scribing their responses and scoring it from 0 to 3. Here are an example of score concept questions. The first passage, concept questions, asks about the Nile. If your focused learner was not familiar with the Nile, you would then move on to the next set of concept questions about building pyramids. This would continue until you find a passage that the focused learner is 55% or more familiar with for expository or informational text. If your focused learner is not familiar or does not score at least 55% with any of the concept questions for the informational texts, then you would choose the one with the highest score and administer that oral reading passage for the expository or informational text. Again, use this flowchart to help you with your next step. When it comes to concept questions, you never change the level based on the score. Please remember to complete the formula, scribe the answers, and select the score for every set of concept questions you administer. This is part of your grade for assignment 3. Remember to audio record the concept question responses as well as scribing them. You are only scoring the focus learner's oral fluency on the first administration. The focus learner will read out loud an expository or informational passage. These are the miscue symbols you would write on your passage that the student reads out loud. You are also recording every passage the focus learner reads out loud. You will give the student a copy of the passage. It will look like this. Normally, it will be accompanied by a picture. As the focus learner reads, you will be marking their miscues on the examiner copy. At the end, you need to identify the total number of miscues, the total number of meaning-changing miscues, their rate, and their words correct per minute. Whether or not you utilize total accuracy or total acceptability is up to you. I usually use total acceptability. At this point, you will determine if the passage is at the independent, instructional, or frustration level. If the focus learner scores on the instructional or independent level, you would move to the retell section. If the focus learner scores on the frustration level, you would stop, go down one level, and administer the concept questions for a new passage. You will need to complete one miscue analysis worksheet with one of the passages read out loud. For instance, you may start on a 5th grade instructional level passage, but after administering oral fluency and comprehension questions, you may have to go down to a 4th grade level or even a 3rd. You would only choose one passage, either 5th, 4th, or 3rd, and complete a miscue analysis worksheet. You do not have to do one for every passage read out loud, only one of your choosing. You are required to write the name of the passage at the top of the miscue analysis worksheet. You need to write the name of the audio file where you recorded the focus learner reading out loud. And if it's not at the beginning of the file, you need to provide the minute and second when the focus learner begins reading the passage out loud. Remember, you are recording every passage your focus learner reads out loud. You are completing the total accuracy, acceptability, words per minute, rate, and words correct per minute for every single passage you administer. If your focus learner scores on the instructional or independent level of the passage oral fluency, you would continue on to the retell checklist. You need to mark off each statement the focus learner makes that correlates to the checklist. If the focus learner provides extra information, then you need to scribe that in. If it's clear that their retell does not reflect a level of understanding, for instance, if you answer no to a majority of the following list of questions, then most likely your focus learner did not understand the passage, and you can move down and administer the concept questions of a lower level passage of the same genre. If your focus learner answers yes to a majority of the following questions, then you would continue on to the comprehension questions. When administering the comprehension questions, you will have to record and scribe the focus learner's responses. For every set of concept questions you administer, you need to provide the number of explicit questions correct, implicit questions correct, the total number correct, and then check off if the focus learner is on the independent, instructional, or frustration level for the passage. Again, this flow chart gives you the next steps. Just because you identified the instructional level does not mean you simply say, okay, one level lower is independent. Or if you identify the independent level, one level above is instructional. In practice, you could probably make that assumption. But for the midterm and assignment 4, when you write about your administration, you need to present examiner copies that verify the instructional and independent levels on both the read aloud and silent reading. If the focus learner scores on the independent level with the comprehension questions, then you need to increase the level of difficulty by one level until you reach the instructional level. If the focus learner scores on the instructional level, you must decrease the level of difficulty by one until you reach the independent level. Finally, if the focus learner performs on the frustration level, you need to continually decrease by one level until he or she reaches the instructional level. And again, continue to decrease until you reach the independent level. Once you have identified the independent and instructional level with informational/expository texts, you are now going to find the student's reading level when reading silently. For this, you will use narrative texts. Generally, narratives tell a story. So, once you identify the instructional level with the expository text, you will administer a narrative passage on the same level. When you submit your work, you will, of course, begin with the concept questions, following the same process. You will record and scribe the answers to the concept questions for narrative passages. The next part is reading the passage. This will not be recorded because the student is reading silently. All you are doing is timing how long it takes the student to read the passage. For the silent reading passage, you will include their reading rate. The next step in the process is the retell. Again, you follow the steps of the retell that were described. And finally, you administer the comprehension questions. And again, you are going to find the independent and instructional level when a student reads a narrative passage silently. When you submit your examiner copies for silent reading, you will have your concept questions scribed, scored, with the equation filled in. The silent reading passages rate, that is the only equation you will be completing. You will have no other marks on the passage. The retell checklist with your checks or handwritten statements, and the concept questions with the number of correct and their level of functioning. These are their answers to the concept questions, retell, and comprehension questions will be the only recording you will do for the silent reading administration.